This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal, medical, or mental health advice. We speak from our personal experiences and opinions. The views expressed are solely those of the individual speaker and are not intended to malign any group, club, organization, or business.
Hey everyone, I'm excited today, as always, to be hanging out with my buddy Chris Shelton. We wanted to take this time to talk about an upcoming workshop. And I'm excited because I'm like the workshop queen. It's my thing. And Chris is the writer and intellectual and great YouTuber. And so I'm having fun bringing him into the workshop world. Peterson with Illuminate Life, a platform that I'm building dedicated to the safe and ethical practice of self-help or personal and professional development. And most of you following this probably know my story, as I came to realize that the group that I gave most of my adult career time to was quite exploitive and have learned since very abusive. And Chris has been a big part of my own journey. So I was delighted to support him in the writing of his recent book, What Now? A Practical Guide to Life After a Cult. We can kind of see it over your shoulder there. Yay! And folks, I know I might be a little biased because Chris is a friend, but I'm telling you, it is a great flipping book. And even if you don't think you've ever been in a cult, if you've been in a relationship or an environment, or you are somebody that is a therapist, a teacher, a trainer, whatever, helping people who have been in high control relationships, or the big thing of the day, Chris, right, is everybody's discovering they're in narcissistic, abusive relationships. So while your book isn't specifically about that in that way, it's all the same patterns. It's all the same stuff that we have to heal from, recover from, but more importantly, understand, because folks, if you don't understand how you got there, there's one thing I can promise you: you'll be there again. It might look different. It might not be a group, because you'll go, groups, that's it. I'm done with groups. I was like that about church. I'm done with church groups. And that's part of why I didn't miss the dangers in Landmark, because it wasn't churchy sounding. And but the dynamics, the patterns are the same. And I've talked to so many people that go from a group to a relationship, or relationship to relationship, or a work environment. So anyway, so that's what we're here today. So Chris, what do you want to say by way of why we're here, and hello?
Hey, everybody. Well, this is the first time I'm trying a workshop, and it's all Anne's fault. And I am very, very much looking forward to this, because I have, written these two books back here on the screen behind me about, one of them about Scientology, and the other one much more generalized to all coercive groups or experiences that we all have experienced. And there's very few people in this world who have not crossed paths with some kind of abusive, predatory personality. And we don't have to go into narcissistic personality disorder to understand that there are people who prey on us, and they see us as, the things to be taken advantage of. And unfortunately, some of them can be really master manipulators. And I fell into and was part of a group, actually didn't fall into it, I was raised in it, with Scientology. And I know many, many others out there fell into that group or got recruited into some other group or situation, including what we call the one-on-one cult, the relationship problem, the domestic abuser. And it goes both ways. It's not a gendered thing. Abuse and predation are equal opportunity activities. But we do tend to see what we see in the world as far as, how that sorts out. But the bottom line is, wherever it's coming from, as Anne mentioned, deconstruction is so much a part of the process of leaving it behind. It's not enough to see the red flags and go, oh, I've got to get out of here. It's, well, why did those look like green flags for a while? Why was that all roses? Why was that all good? What made that relationship or made that group make so much sense to you? And when you come out, suddenly because of the feelings of betrayal and loss and trauma and abuse that happened to us in these situations, we wonder what was wrong with us? What was wrong with our ability to see or hear or feel what was going on? Why didn't we see it? It's all so obvious after the fact. I've been there. I did that. And I've spent a lot of years working with other people as well in this process. And so this book here is all about all the lessons that I've kind of learned along the way. Not that anybody has to follow the same path I followed, But I think we all follow our own path, but the lessons and the guideposts and the things and the pitfalls and things we're going to run into are going to be very, very similar from one to the next. And that's why I thought this book would be useful for people. And that's why I'm looking forward to doing a whole workshop about it.
Well, and the cool thing about the workshop too is how we're doing it. It's really different. We're going to go chapter by chapter. So, and you can join at any time. You can join at chapter 9. Chapter 1, we start next week on June 30th. But if you're seeing this and it's, it's August or whatever, you can still join. And anybody who joins at any point will get all the recordings. They'll get all the material from all the chapters. But the piece that's really great is the opportunity to talk it through with people who have lived it, been there in different kinds of scenarios. So we'll have people we're calling it a workshop because I don't know what else to call it. But it's, there'll be people who are in those one-to-one relationships. There'll be people that were in recognized cultic groups like Scientology. Chris says that Landmark is cult light, folks. He teases me all the time. I was like in cult light. And I got to say, he's probably kind of right. But, I was in a seminar. I worked for a seminar company, personal and professional training and development. And there was lots of good things in that group and whatever. But sorting through it really takes something. And so there will be people from lots of different kinds of things. And I have personally found that really valuable since I wrote my book, so many people have called me and they're like, hey, I wasn't in Landmark, but I was in this thing or this thing or this thing and then what about politics, right? Now the cult word is being used all over the political spectrum, which look, folks have different opinions about that. But I'll tell you one thing, when all the post-cult people who have been in harmful, destructive, high control, manipulative cult environments, when they're all screaming from the mountaintops, these are the same patterns. And we're getting, as a society, wrapped up in them in ways that are not healthy for us individually or collectively. And so understanding those patterns, I think, is essential for our personal and societal health. And one of the ways to do that is kind of deconstructing your own experience or listening to people who are doing that so that you can learn how to avoid those things. And also a lot of the misunderstandings too. There's a lot of words are like everything's narcissistic now, right? Okay, but what does that really mean? And how do you know if it's a dangerous kind of narcissism? Is there a kind of narcissism that isn't really, to be human is somewhat narcissistic. It's a part of the human experience. So where's that line? These are all the kinds of things that, Chris, in your book, you do it so well. You have a real knack for taking sort of complicated big things and making them simpler and easier to understand and follow. That's one of my favorite things about talking with you and working with you.
Right. I really think the operative word there is learn, because that is what this book is an effort to do, is teach, is to educate. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a clinician. I don't pretend to be. That's not what this book or this effort is about. My effort is to educate, inform, and through that education, empower. And I have not found anything in the last 13 years of my journey that is more than learning about what happened to me, how it happens to other people, how actually even, from one predator to the next, it's the same playbook. It's the same behaviors. It's the same control systems, the same methods of influence. And you come to learn through this very easy education, actually, it's really not that hard to get, that there are only so many ways to control people. There are only so many ways to manipulate people. And we offer up ourselves in so many ways because we're trying so hard to navigate our lives successfully and fulfill our emotional and moral needs. And that is kind of what's driving us forward. And when we understand ourselves at that level, I believe it proofs us up against future predation and coercion, because we understand what these guys are all about and what they're doing before they even open their mouths. And I just think that gives us a leg up in the world.
Yeah, I don't think I heard recently on Mark Vicente has a podcast out series he's doing now, where kind of an intensive following a particular group. I never say his name right, Benito Massaro or whatever. Anyway, the magic penis guy, he said if, you had sex with him, that, somehow you would be transformed. Many men have tried it. He seems to have perfected it. But there was one of the victims of that, and she said this really powerful thing for me as a woman who grew up kind of post height of feminism. And I remember starting when I was 17, going to all these self-defense is empowerment. And look, you talk to any woman, she'll tell you all about the rules, like, don't park next to a van, always park under a light, have your keys out. Key fobs have actually caused a whole problem for the defense of women because we were taught to have our keys out so you could, stab and defend yourself. Like this was part of growing up in the 70s, 80s, 90s, how to keep yourself physically safe. And this gal talked about that. She knew how to keep her body physically safe. She said, but nobody ever taught me how to keep my mind safe. And I thought that was so right on the money. And to me, that's a lot of what your book in particular does. There's a lot of great books out there from a lot of great people, and they all come at it from different angles. Your book does a really good job of like, no, folks, this is how it works. This is what's happening. And you've got a lot of not only your own personal stories, but you've worked with a lot of people over your 10-year journey as well. So you've got a lot of real life examples. But how do we keep our mind safe? And I can't tell you how many people want to know that, answer that question without looking at the problem, without looking at the dark side, without looking at, like we don't want to go there. And I remember when I first started talking with you, you were one of the first people after I wrote my book. And all along the way, the year and a half or so we've been talking, you've always had really great advice for me. And one of the first ones was about deconstructing. Like it's worth deconstructing what happened to you for so many reasons, but understanding so that you can avoid those situations, recognize predatory people, recognize predatory behavior, because sometimes you have good people, but they're exhibiting predatory behavior because our society rewards it. How do you see that stuff? So you know when to step aside, you know when to say stop, you know when to call the police, which is something I didn't know. People were coming to me saying they were being physically harmed. And I was like, well, one of the options is you could call the police. I'm like, now I'd be like, hello, I will call the police for you. Like, no. But if you're being mentally harmed, it's a little harder to know what to do and how to avoid.
That's right,
Really?
especially because they work so hard to undermine your ability to understand what's going on and sort of subsume or corrupt your agreement, your informed consent. You think you know what you're getting into. You think this person is so honest and so transparent. And there are signs, but if you don't know what they are, then it can be hard to see them, especially even if you do know what the signs are. It's hard because we are, becoming emotionally involved with this person. So there's so many things to learn about ourselves, not just what the predators do in this process of taking it all apart. And that's what I think we're really going to be talking a lot about in this workshop is ourselves a lot more than the cult leaders or personalities. Of course, we're going to go there. We'll go anywhere anybody wants to go. And there's going to be a lot of answers to a lot of questions, I'm sure. But it will really focus on all sides of the equation. There were other people involved. There are enablers. There are victimizers. There are the roles we took on that maybe we're not so proud of now, and the things that we got involved in. And that's also part of the experience. It's not just about what was done to us. Sometimes some of the, barbs of this and the trauma of this is what we were coerced to do to other people. So I think a really well-rounded look at all of that, again, in a non-therapeutic environment. This isn't about trying to therapize anybody. We're just trying to educate. But I think that education can have, at least it has for me and for the people I've worked with over the years, it has provided some degree of catharsis.
Well, before we wrap up this little short video, and I want to bring up one thing that you taught me, and that it's in the book that I actually used this morning, which is inside your REM model, right? So our rationalization, emotional needs, and our moral foundations. And, folks will spend plenty of time on this in the workshop. But I have to tell you, I'm in this business situation with some dear friends, actually. But things have gotten really kind of sticky and icky and challenging, and for a variety of reasons. But as I've been navigating this situation, I keep seeing that's rationalization. Like, we've got a problem, and the parties involved are telling me all their reasons, all the stuff about the problem, all that. And I literally am sitting there going, this is the rationalization that Chris talks about. So will you say just a little bit, I'm going to kind of set you up because it was so great when you introduced this to me, but rationalization is what happens when. That was a little bit of a leading sentence, but it was startling to me when you introduced me to this, because I think my decisions come from my rationalization.
And it's
I
actually
think that
not
I
quite that.
weigh things out. I weigh them. I look at the best evidence available to me at the time, and then I make a choice. Anyway, don't get me started on choice. We'll do whole episodes on choice. But that's how I thought it worked until Chris explained. Hit it, Chris.
Yeah, it's a little bit, there are some underlying layers to your reason that are very, very, very much driving the engine of your behavior. And that has everything to do with that emotional layer, which is all about our emotional reactions in the moment, but also our longer term emotional needs. And if me saying emotional needs is like, this foreign, what is that? What are you talking about? You're not at all alone in thinking that. Very few of us out there seem to really get that there is this part of us that is the engine of our behavior, that is our emotional layer, and that's what's really pushing us to do what we do. And of course, underlying that, even more basic, right up against our identity, is our morality. And it's a complicated thing. It's not a simple thing. It's not a simple Simon thing. It's not, the 10 Commandments rule my life, or L. Ron Hubbard's rule set rules my life. It's a much more complicated playing field that we operate in as human beings when we talk about our morals. But all of this is in the book. All of this is something we will be going over in a lot of detail, because this model is really the model of us. And we have a bite model or a bounded choice model, or many, many models for how to think about cults. And this model is more about how to think about ourselves, how to think about the cult person, the member themselves. And it offers an awful lot of insight and combines an awful lot of very, very validated social science into a very easy to understand picture. And that was the whole goal of that model. So we will definitely be talking about that.
Well, and exactly. And the switch you flipped for me was that my rationalization is what I did in order to justify or get my emotional need met. Like that, and that
That's
most
right.
of the time, quite often, my rationalization of something came after a behavior. So like, as I'm dealing
Exactly.
in this business situation and there's some behavior that wasn't good and it wasn't healthy, right? Let's just say that. So it wasn't healthy. And to anybody involved in the situation, I really love this person who did this cuckoo behavior. So I was like rationalizing for them
Yep.
to soothe the upset that I was experiencing. For them, the rationalization gave them a way to excuse their behavior and not
Exactly. And
and not
that's
actually look at like, whoa, wait, why did I do that? What was the
that's right.
thing going on there? And so it's like, it's just so interesting. I can see us acting, behaving, and then rationalizing now. I see it that way all the time.
But it really clarifies things, because the rationalizations, the reasons we come up with things so often they can be sensible, logical reasons. We're not suggesting that we're all a bunch of irrational, nutters. It's just that this layer of our personality, of our inner world, exists to justify our existence. And it doesn't always deal in truth. And when something
Yeah,
feels really good, we can come up with a laundry list of very sensible reasons why we need to keep doing that very good thing. And this is the path to addiction. This is the path to, not so great things for some of us sometimes. So the power of our reasonable mind can be corrupted, we could say, or it could be sort of curtailed into justifying our emotions and our morals, which are so personal to us and so personal to our experience in life, that it's not so much for us about right, wrong, good, bad. It's about, what do I need? What do I want? And pursuing that, and then coming up with all the reasons why it totally makes sense for us to do that, even if we're blowing up our life in the process. And that's what this model helps to
well, and
explain.
it even works. I'll say this is the last thing and then we'll wrap up. But it also works when something terrible happens and you don't understand it. So,
Yeah.
I saw things and heard things, and I remember having a thought like, is he physically hurting them? No. And then I had a whole explanation. Now I had help along the way. I was given certain narratives that were very good rationalizations. I mean, I was actually given what a rationalization for what I would likely be seeing, that most people, the average person would call, at the very least, verbal abuse. I didn't see physical abuse, but verbal abuse. So rationalizations are also a way for us to avoid uncomfortable situations, cognitive dissonance, like, as well. So it gets us what we want, like the giant piece of cake that I ate yesterday that I have a hangover from today that I should not be eating, right? Like, it's Dave's birthday. It's just once I'll deal, whatever to get this thing that I want. But then there's also to avoid the things I don't want and or that I don't understand or that are painful. So that's just one little sample, folks. That's actually one chapter out of 21. It gets referenced a lot. It's kind of a deep underlying thing and it probably the subject of Chris's next book, but it's really, really powerful. In each chapter of this book, Chris goes kind of deep into the things that someone coming out of a high control situation encounters and gives a really great first person lessons of how to unwind that. And I just can't recommend it enough. And really, if you're somebody out there who's experienced these kinds of groups, this kind of relationship, or you just feel like you found yourself for whatever reason acting and behaving in ways that aren't consistent with who you think you are or what you thought you were about, something like that, this is a great place. And if you're somebody in a helping role, for that, I think this is also a good place to learn to understand these dynamics so that we can be a part of making a better world for all of us. Chris and I are
Exactly.
out of the Save Humanity business, believe it or not, but we still have to feed that just a little bit from time to time. We do want to make a difference for people where we can, and certainly with the hard won lessons. That's a natural human instinct as well. So
That's right.
Chris, thank you so much, first and foremost, for writing the book. I have gotten so much out of it and really look forward to every Tuesday at noon Pacific time. But like I said, we don't expect that everybody will do every session all the time. We know because it's 21 chapters. It's a lot.
A lot.
So there'll be a private community group where you can talk with other participants and things. You'll have access to all the recordings. And I'm pretty confident along the way, Chris and I are going to be throwing all kinds of other resources as we think of them throughout the conversations. And all that'll be available in this private community group for everybody who's involved. So please consider coming on and joining us. If any of this resonates or is of interest to you, please come join us. Look in the show notes. We'll have it linked in the show notes how you can come participate.
Awesome.
So thanks.
Hope to see
Thank
you
you,
there,
Chris.
folks.